What are the big things that are going to impact camp in the future that we're just not talking enough about? Hello, Camp Mavericks, and welcome to the CampHacker podcast, brought to you by UltraCamp, Camptivities, and the brand new Camp Recruiting and Retention Playbook from Joanna Warren-Smith and me. I'm Travis Allison. I'm a summer camp marketing and strategy consultant.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Hudson. I'm a camp consultant and the co-founder of Camp Highlight, a sleepaway camp for children who have LGBTQ parents. I recently won the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I'm really excited about it. That's not true, but imagine it was. Hi, everybody.
This is the part in CampHacker where Chris lies.
The only part. The only part.
Totally. EmJ.
Hey there, my name is MJ. I use she, her pronouns. I am the program director with Project Kindred based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I am the podcast producer for the Summer Camp Society podcast. Excited to be here.
Right on.
I'm Jack Schott, and I'm the co-founder of the Summer Camp Society and Camp Stomping Ground, where I used to be a co-executive director, and I'm stoked to be here with all of y'all. Let's have some fun.
Absolutely. So we're excited to be doing a back-to-back recording with the Summer Camp Society. Jack and I had a discussion that leads into this one very naturally. So if you enjoyed this conversation, definitely go and directly subscribe to the Summer Camp Society podcast and get a related discussion. We're going to release them both. We'll coordinate and release them both on the same day. So yes, we're talking about the big things that we're not talking about. And I think there's quite a list of these. Something that I've been trying to think about and be really intentional about in the last year is figure out what are the missing pieces. And some of the stuff that that I've gathered through conversations with people include climate change. And we're going to spend some CampHacker time on climate change. So I won't get into too much detail about what we need to be doing about that. I think that there's going to be a surprisingly large impact on summer camp based on what's going on with AI. And I think that there are some real problems that might happen in the future with how much camp has to cost in order for us to do it versus what parents can afford. I think we have a big issue with deferred maintenance in this industry. And I think that burnout and even how cities are getting closer to our camps and putting pressure on our camp facilities are huge, big issues that we'll probably try to spend some more time on. But we're going to focus today on demographic changes and what it means to be an industry that is based on things that happened in the 50s, 60s, and 70s in middle-class America. As we look at expanding us beyond that audience into different people, welcoming more people, being intentional about bringing some more people in. Chris, I know that this is a topic that you deal with a lot in your work. Is there a place you'd like us to start, you'd like us to think about where we get going on this?
Specific to demographic change?
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with this. Only because, I've always come from the perspective that, camp was never made for people like me. Mm-hmm. I'm extraordinarily Black and queer. And I think a lot about the roots of camping, how it is very much rooted in a middle class and white experience. Now, in America, at least, there's data that came out that said, we've been saying this a lot, but in the not too distant future, a full 50% of America will be Latino or Hispanic descended. And if that's the case, given that people listening to this are like running camps, well, what does that mean as far as the overarching culture of our camps? Obviously all of our camps are different. There are specialty camps, there are religious camps, but nevertheless, the roots of this experience come from the same place. And and that's what I do in my consulting work, is really helping camps like acknowledge, accept, and then figure out how to problem solve for the world that, I don't want to say the world that's coming, because
Sure.
Newsflash, people of color, queer people have always been here, mm-hmm. but the world as it is, like, how do we make sure that this business, this industry continues into the future? And a lot of that's just thinking critically about the culture and thinking critically about how you schedule, what food you serve, like what, who you hire, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Jack, I know that when you folks set up Stomping Ground and some of the work you've done since has been a lot of intention around being open and available to folks, and addressing some of the lack of diversity that is pretty prevalent in summer camp.
Yeah, I think so. Stomping Ground started by a couple of cis straight white folks in 2015, and we're woke ass liberals, so we're trying to make sure that we can bring people in that normally wouldn't go to camp. And it's awesome. Stomping Ground's a great camp. I don't know, something like at this point, I don't know the stats that they've got going, but it's a 30 or 40% of Stomping Ground are campers and staff are people of color. There's tons of queer folks at Stomping Ground. And I know the team there works really hard to make sure that everybody feels like they belong, that camp is designed to be welcoming, and designed with the folks that it's for, right? I think that's a huge part of the work that Laura and the team are doing there right now, is like, how do we increase participant voice and choice in the program? So it's not just like whatever Laura and I thought in 2015, was baked with our bias from 2015. And we had done a bunch of work to try to make it so that we were an inclusive space, but like we were still like baking in our bias. And this is something that I'm fascinated by and really think is important as we move forward in the future of camp. And Travis, we mentioned this on the Summer Camp Society pod, which is there isn't much space for innovation in the sleepaway camp world, right? So like it's really hard to start a sleepaway camp in 2023. Chris has done it, right? Chris started Highlight a bunch of years ago and was able to reimagine from the ground up what camp would look like from the perspective of Chris's lived experience and create that, right? Like he started from that space. And I think like one of the things that camps don't do is we don't reinvent what it looks like, and that's okay. There's a lot of reasons for that, but what that means is we have entrenched power with the people who have been in these positions for a long time. So like it's awesome that camps are doing a bunch of DEI work, they're doing a bunch of Jedi work, they're trying to make camp more inclusive, but we're retrofitting rich white spaces, rich white straight spaces, for more people to be included. And we should be doing that. Let's go. Let's retrofit these spaces, please. Let's make them more inclusive. But like, also, what are we doing to make it so that a person that doesn't look like me, that doesn't have, middle white kid, straight white boy background, like is in charge from the beginning? How do we make it possible for new camps to start that are started by younger people, that are started by Black folks, that are started by queer folks, that are started by folks that are different, right? Than me. So that camp is then different. Like you look at the cool, like Brave Trails is hella cool because in some ways they're very different just because they started not as straight folks. Like it's like different, right? So what I'm fascinated by, yes, let's do a bunch of Jedi work to be shifting our camps. Let's think about what our marketing looks like. Let's change. But listen, when Nelson Strickland starts Camp Eno this summer, and he has a camp that's started by a Black man, guess what? It is just from the ground up going to be different than what Stomping Ground was like, because he's just going to be like, yeah, we're serving this food differently. He's not even going to think about it. It's just going to be built from that culture, right? He's going to come from that perspective. His bias is going to be drastically different than the bias that I bring to the table, even though we both have like really similar intentions. We just come from different places, and I think that's going to be awesome. So what I really care about is how do we build this culture of innovation into camp so that camps are built from the ground up differently. And like not white folks still should start camps, queer folks should start camps, straight folks should start camps. We need more camps. We need more camps, and we need more people that are different to start those camps so that this can happen.
Yeah, that's great. MJ, I know you've got lots of different perspectives. I mean, it's one of the nice things about this conversation is we all bring different pieces to this. What are some of the things you've been thinking about how the world is changing? We are not going that big. What are some things about demographics that really strike you from your experience?
Yeah, so the organization I'm with right now, Project Kindred, we are based in Milwaukee, and the idea is to disrupt segregation within our city. And so it's bringing a lot of populations and identities together. And I think had we had this conversation a year ago, I would have had a very different perspective. But I'm thinking about the ways that my staff are showing up for my campers, and when my campers get to camp, they're seeing people that look like them in a safe space or a place that they feel safe with the staff that we have. Something we're doing, I think, Jack is sharing this really cool big picture, almost intimidating thing to me of like starting camps, and I'm trying to think like, okay, as a camp and program director, what are the small things that I can start doing at my camp? Because I can tell you right now, I'm not going to start my own camp. I will support others that do. I'm not doing that. And so I'm thinking, okay, how do I start getting more diverse representation within my staff? My staff are, as Chris shared, we're getting to a point where a lot of the demographic is going to be Latinx and Latinx identity. So how can I start putting in Spanish translations? How can I start making sure that some of the staff I'm hiring are fluent in Spanish? And so those kind of things are, when I think about demographics, I'm thinking, okay, what are the small putting that in quotations, tools or skills or people that I can put into place for my camp to start making it better? So I think about that. And I also think about how kind of that, like, we think of camps and the, like, a lot of times it's just like wilderness oasis kind of thing. And how are we keeping young people that are more accessible to camp feeling safe when we're going to a campsite where maybe you're passing you're passing flags of different, parties or the voting signs and things like that? How do I make my Black campers feel safe in those spaces? Because they trusted me, and now I need them to feel trusted in a space that takes us an hour or two outside of Milwaukee. So I think I'm thinking a little bit more about those quote unquote smaller things to make it better for my campers now and in the future.
Yep.
I
Chris?
could drill down even more, because like,
Yeah.
I think there's granular things that like we take for granted when we set up a camp. The vendors that you use, who's delivering the food to your camp, right? And what are you buying in bulk? Chicken nuggets and mac and cheese? Okay, that's great. There might be a lot of kids who are coming internationally who have no experience with that kind of food. Also, your staff, if you pull your international staff and this is what you're feeding them for 6 to 8 weeks, it requires a thought. A lot of us are just like, well, the kitchen's the kitchen, food's food, but it's not, especially when you are so far from home. And I mean, you can continue to drill down, like even the way that cabins are laid out, personal space, I've been working in camp for a long time. Privacy was never a consideration when it came to the cabins. And when I started being a counselor, I'd be like, all right, kids, time for the pool. And it was a cabin of all boys. And they would just drop trow, grab their bathing suits, run around naked, pull their stuff up for a variety of reasons, none of which I'm going to judge here. That we don't do that anymore, right? We don't do that anymore. We have, and not for any of the societal reasons that you're thinking of, but just like some campers, some staff require privacy for reasons that are beyond the prurient, beyond like what people may do to them or damage or violation. And so I think about every cabin I've been in the last year. I visited a lot of camps. They have like the sheet and stuff, but we need to go a little bit further in thinking about that when we are setting up our camps. Now, like Jack said, like starting a camp in 2023, listen, real talk, unless you're a millionaire, unless you're like a multimillionaire, a lot of the things that I'm bringing up are going to be really, really daunting, especially if you're starting. So I'm not saying you got to have all the boxes checked, but it's something to think about as we move in. Like, I think when we started this conversation, Jack was like, yes, do all the DEI work. Yes, do all the inclusion work. Yes, or Travis might have said that. Absolutely. But I'm talking about going back to real basics, like food, shelter, staff, programming, location. You mentioned MJ, like driving through like, whether it be signs about Black Lives Don't Matter or Trump 2024 and forever or whatever it is, like having to move your staff and campers and families through that while you promised that you would keep their kids safe, you would give them an educative and a growth opportunity. It's kind of a hard sell. And while we can't necessarily change the people around the campsites that people are either renting or buying, I don't have a solution there, but it's something to think about when we think about setting up camps. Like, what does it mean? Like, I find a site and I'm like, this will be great for my camp. It's right in the reddest part of the reddest state of the United States of America. This will be fine. is that the right choice in 2023?
Well, I think I see that both of you have ideas that you want to share. So come back to you both, I promise. One of the things, Chris, that this has been something I've been thinking about a lot in the last few years is that we're so locked into this idea of what camp is, that's, it's based on movies and it's all that stuff that the sort of society says what camp is, which is remote and all that. I think we have to acknowledge that we have to take camp to people, and we have to be way better at that, in bringing camp to people, bring camp into communities that we haven't served before, communities that we have served, but we've made them drive through bad experiences to get to our little haven places. So I think that is important. The other thing that I want to add, I promise I'm coming back. The other thing I want to add into this discussion is that I think language is important. Chris, you're talking about Maslow. Like let's nail the bottom of the pyramid. Let's make sure people feel safe. They've got the food. If you don't agree with the pyramid, that's fine. I'm just saying, let's nail the basics. We make people understand where they go to the bathroom, what they're going to eat, where they're going to sleep. Those are really basic stories that we need to tell as camps to make sure that they are inclusive. Another part of it is that, which I think is part of what you said, MJ, we have to acknowledge that there are we have to get better at communicating with parents by not just communicating in English. As the demographics change, and here in Ontario over the next 25 years, it's not going to be just English and French that we have to serve here. And it's a lot more different languages coming in. So that's a part of it. Jack, you had a thought that but what Chris was saying, or something else?
Chris was just saying that it's going to cost millions of dollars to do this, and there's a lot of millionaire pieces to this. Like if anybody's got a couple $1 million and they want to do cool stuff, like please give me a call. Actually, you know what? Call Chris instead.
I really need it. Thank you.
But I think like the reality is like a lot of this doesn't take a lot of money. It does take a lot of time, and it takes thinking about some stuff, and it takes making a phone call. It takes these kind of things, and so like. It's overwhelming, and like MJ said, like most people aren't going to start camps. That's too bad. It's easier to start a camp than you think, and it's harder than hell. Both are true. It's possible. It takes time. It takes energy. It doesn't take as much money as you think, but it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. You can do it if you want to do it. Chris and I want to help you, so just send us an email.
And yeah, absolutely. That's actually very true. I will absolutely help you with that. And a lot of it is thinking out the box. Travis, you just mentioned this idea that camp has to be remote. You have to be by a lake or on the top of a mountain or in a forest somewhere. Like that's one of those foundational things that we don't challenge. And also it leaves a lot of people out. There's a lot of camps that are starting on college campuses, right? In community centers, whether it be day or sleepaway or what have you. And that is something that should be part of the conversation when we talk about camping. Because what is camping? Is it always about being around a fire in the middle of a forest, far away from everybody that you know? I'm not certain. That's been my experience of it for the past 30 years. But, it isn't the 90s anymore. It's not the 60s anymore. It's 2023. The internet has changed everything. The pandemic has changed even more. What kids need today, what families need today is going to be markedly different from what they needed even 10 years ago. So yeah, starting a camp, Jack, you're absolutely right. Maybe it doesn't take millions, although if you have millions and you want to give me some, please call. But it does take a lot of foundational thought about like what experience do I want to give young people, as opposed to just being like, yeah, it's going to look like all the camps in the movies. A lot of problems with some of those things. And I need to be really clear, right? I'm not attacking anyone's camp experience. The experience that you had was the experience that you needed to have that was available to you at that time. Now, with all the people coming into the room and sitting at the table, we now know better, which is why we're going to do better. Right, everybody?
Mm-hmm. MJ, what are some practical things that we can encourage people to do to be intentional about this?
I think the first and foremost is we need to start sending Chris all of our millionaire contacts. And then once you have done that, I am thinking about some of these tactical things to go back to about like transportation into some of those rural areas. I think Simone with OR shares that like how can we front load this information to people so that they're at least aware of it and they're not blindsided by those things that they see. And it's like, you know, when you get to camp, you're going to see a bunch of rainbows, or you do see the Black Lives Matter flags, and like it's going to be this place. So I think that's one thing, is just like front loading what that experience is going to look like. Something we do with all of our people in Milwaukee. So like, to note, my organization, our sessions are about 56 campers. So we have the luxury of all busing up together. And I think that helps as well. So we're thinking about family transportations. We're thinking about those economic statuses, and all of our campers are having a shared experience getting to camp. So that may be something to consider if a lot of your campers are coming from the same spaces. Someone touched a little bit on like the dietary changes that, or like more and more dietary additions and accommodations that are coming up. And it's like, what are more things across the board in our dining hall that we can start implementing? I'm not lactose intolerant, but I do love a good oat milk with anything that I want to add milk to, right? And I may not have that quote unquote luxury because I'm not a camper or person that said that I'm lactose intolerant. So like, how can we add more of that just like choice base in there? Looking at my notes here, starting to think about your packing list. I think this is maybe a few years old, at least on my radar, is, do you have a very like white centered camping list versus something that could just be like all hair care, all shower materials, and that camper is going to know what that means. Yeah, I think those are my big ones. And again, I am really excited about what we started in bringing in Spanish speaking staff and our volunteers that have now turned into paid program people to translate our handbooks, to be that person that we can call. There's also programs online where you can like be sent to a translator to have some of those conversations. But you know, in Milwaukee, we're seeing a really, really large population preferring to speak in Spanish and having a better understanding and preparation because we're talking in their preferred language. So I think that was one that I'm hitting really hard on right now. And just something that I think makes your camp could be way more safe, and make those families feel really, really safe about bringing their kids to your spaces. So those are some of those kind of 1, 2, 3 things that I would recommend.
Perfect. What are you thinking about, Jack?
Well, so I'm glad we haven't done this, but I think a lot of times when we talk about being more inclusive of different folks at camp, we often just jump right to scholarships. And here's the reality: there's tons of rich folks that aren't white. There's tons of rich folks that speak different languages. There's and so like, yeah, we should listen. I'm trying to give away more scholarships too. Like, let's definitely do that. And let's look at this from like a financial perspective. Like, if the demographics of the country are changing, right? If they are going to be different, if there's not going to be only rich white people, like there's tons of other folks that have hella money, like it's also good for your business to be more inclusive, right? And so like, yes, we should, like, you're never going to hear me say we shouldn't give away more scholarships. I could not believe in that more. And there's a whole conversation to be had around like, what does it look like to be inclusive of poor white folks from rural areas at a progressive camp? Like, as Stomping Ground, that group is much less included than poor black folks or whatever. Like, that group is and I don't know what to do there. I'm not sure how to think about that, because those kids deserve to be served. Their parents are making choices for them that I disagree with. Whatever. We got to figure out the changing demographics of the country. How do we bring people together around that? But I just want to make sure we come back to like, listen, like, let's back to Nelson as an example. It's going to be way more likely that rich black folks are going to send their kid to Nelson's camp because they're going to be like, oh yeah, this guy's awesome, and we want to support him, and whatever. Then they want to send him to my camp. Hell yeah. So let's figure out how to do that so that we can build an infrastructure that lets more awesome people run more awesome camps. Let's
understand that decision-making process, Jack. Like, let's understand why like middle class, upper class Black people would make that choice. Because you said something really important about like, whenever it's like we need more diversity at camps, everyone assumes, oh, the price is what's keeping them out. So let's lower the bar. First of all, check yourself about your ideas about Black people, first of all, about people of color and their economic opportunities. Structurally, sure, there are barriers, but like you said, plenty of people of color who have money. I want to share a really quick story, right? When it comes to thinking about what camps are offering. If you've ever seen me speak live, you've heard this story before, just fast forward a little bit. My dad grew up in Jamaica, and before he was born, my grandfather had died. My grandmother had to move to a cemetery because she didn't have any money. My dad grew up in a shack. They had to like forage for food. It was wild. When I was young and he had come to this country, he worked 4 or 5 jobs because it was really important to him that I always had a roof over my head. Always, always, always. Now imagine selling to this man, oh, I'm going to take your child into the woods, and for 3 nights out of the 7, we're going to sleep under the stars. See, that understanding of a Black immigrant experience has nothing to do with money, right? It has to do with culture. So if your first step is, oh, it's the money, that's why we don't have Black people, check yourself and learn something. Perhaps talk to some people of color. I just want to highlight that because I think it's important, Jack.
I think this comes back to camp is so much about relationships, and I want to push people to develop relationships in the communities that they hope to. Like, we can't just go in and say, hey, we have this great thing, you should send your kids here. We don't have any relationships, we don't have any trust, we don't have any of those things. And so that level of intention, us going to people instead of expecting people to come to us, and developing good listening skills. It's easy to describe when I think camps are used to in selling to different families who have camp in their background. They understand camp, they just go to that little differentiator, what makes our camp a little bit different. But we need to go through we need to be very prepared to talk through the very basics so that people are assured from the beginning that we can make their kids feel safe and look after them well. And it depends on relationships and having those conversations with folks. So one other piece that I want to add into this, we don't have to spend a lot of time here, but demographics to me doesn't just mean people's background, different people's backgrounds. I think one of the demographic changes that we should acknowledge and is a huge opportunity for us is that the North American population, the European population, is getting older. And there are opportunities for us to serve different than just kids if we're thoughtful about that. I don't know if that's an idea that resonates with folks they want to spend any time on, but I definitely want to encourage listeners to think about, again, bring programs to people, but looking at a different age of the person that we serve as an opportunity as well. It could be, if you don't pick up on that, that's fine. Chris, I like that face. Jack's got a good face too. MJ, everybody's got a face. Let's go with it.
I know our faces are so nice, but because I'm just thinking about that. Now, okay, let's enter into conversation. Travis, do you mean like these adult camps which invite adults to come and like drink and get messy for a weekend? That's not what you mean.
No.
Okay.
No, I'm not talking party camp.
Jack is like, well, tell me more. John.
I honestly, I'm thinking that what we know and the way we deal with people can help people who are older. So I don't mean party camp. I mean creating activities and creating a place that is welcoming and a staff that is creating a staff that is comfortable talking to old people is a challenge. When you are a college student, that comfort level is just not there. So that's just some opportunities. I'm coming through this from my usual lenses. How do we get more people to camp and make more money? And so I'm saying that there's a crowd there that we're not addressing, that could be an opportunity.
I agree. And I think, from family camps are a great way to get adults. Every time we do a family camp at Camp Highlight, we have Highlight Family Camp. Both the kids and the parents are like, can the adults just do this without us? the adults want to hang out together, especially because it's a specialty camp. They're all queer people. So when I think about that, like pulling people together, I think about Ramapo for Children in Rhinebeck, New York, has a program for older people. They're young adults mostly, but they have some developmental disabilities, and they're in a camp situation with people who are trained to work with them. But there'd be like the non-traditional camper, right? These are people who are like 24, 25, 26, who still get the magic of camp tailored to their particular needs. I think that's a great idea. I mean, if we're going to go down that road, also just, Jack had brought up in the chat about autism diagnosis doubling in the last decade. I mean, one, all camps need to be more sensitive to that. But two, thinking about a program specifically aimed at that population. I think there is definitely, like you suggest, Travis, there's definitely room to think about like the age and type of customer and client that we usually invite into the space.
And to clarify, that statistic is autism diagnosis among adults in the US has doubled in the last decade, but 1 in 36 camp age kids will have an autism diagnosis this summer. 1 in 36. So like they're not all coming to camp, obviously, but like that's a huge demographic change. And part of that's for two reasons. It's one, more people know about autism. It's more likely that people are being diagnosed. It's specifically like under-resourced communities now are having more access to the diagnosis. And also it's likely that more folks just are on the spectrum in a lot of different ways. I'm not an expert on this, but like listen, I'm talking my book over here. My friends are just starting camps all over the place. So Nelson's starting a camp in New York, and my friends are starting a camp called Camp Skywild for kids with autism, and they run a program called Explorers for exactly what you're talking about, Chris, which is this like group of people that are not quite camp age anymore, right? They're 18, 19, 20, 24, whatever. And they're like still trying to figure out how to interact with the world. And camp is a great tool. It's a great learning place to come and do that. And so, yeah, I think that we all need more support figuring out how to be supportive to more kids on the spectrum and who have all kind of different, learning needs that are neurodivergent, those kind of things. And so like, I think there's a ton of little things we can do to do that for neurotypical camps. And we need more camps specifically for folks that just probably won't be successful in a neurotypical environment, or where we have more supports that we spend a ton of money and energy to bring these folks in. And there's going to be a market for that too, because there just is money, both government money, private money, and just like family money to support folks who have different needs than your neurotypical camper, whether it's autism, ADHD, 22Q, whatever. Just keep going. I think that's really important. But Travis, back to your age thing, the other demographic change that's really big here is that I believe, and Chris, you can tell me if I'm wrong about how your life works now, but like I believe all four of us work remotely.
True.
Everybody works remotely.
More or
Not
less,
everybody.
yeah.
But like everybody that is doing this laptop, the laptop class is all working remotely, right? And so what are our opportunities to bring people to camp and let them work? Right? Like you could imagine, like, what if you just had a few extra cabins where your trade is you can keep working half the day and you're going to come volunteer the other half the day down at camp, lead stuff, do whatever, be a social worker at camp, whatever. What's interesting to me about this is that that structure for the summer is a capital investment versus an operating investment, right? So like it's a one-time expense, and nonprofit camps are really good at raising money and sort of suck at operating expenses. So can we go out and raise a couple $1,000,000, build some houses on our property that are going to be for families to come out, spend the summer at camp, like we do this with nurses and doctors already, but let's do it with mental health professionals. Let's do it with graphic designers, whatever. It doesn't matter. Awesome adults at camp doing their work, continuing to like get their normal paycheck, but they get to have the summer at camp doing whatever. And they've got like a little kind of like virtual village over here where they've got their family, or they don't have families because their team no kids, we got freedom, like me and Chris. Like there's a lot of
freedom
opportunities
and money. I just want to shout out to all my single friends without kids. Love kids, but come on now.
Other people's kids.
love giving kids back, let me tell you. And not hating on any parents.
Yeah.
More power to you. I get to sleep or drink beers or do whatever I want. Love you all very much. But anyway, like, what are those opportunities? And then year round, what are those opportunities too? Like, there's this like joke about like, yeah, come to camp and get drunk and whatever, these like sort of messy and I got nothing against those.
Yeah.
Good for, like, let's go. That's fun for those people. Yep. No drama for me. But like, we could do all kind of things. Come to camp for a week and work remotely, but just come eat in the dining hall and we're gonna sit around the campfire and sing songs, or you know, any other multitude of things where you get to work. We need internet. We need a capital investment where the internet is good, but you can come. And then we have this opportunity because people spend tons of money on these kind of experiences, and they're not that expensive for us to run.
Right.
From an operating, now from a capital expenditure, they might be, depending on your facility. Fill your camp first with campers.
That change, Jack, is it's kind of a demographic, kind of a societal change too, that it's worth acknowledging that I think our facilities could change for the better. Certainly the climate change part of it is that every building should have air conditioning going forward for safety reasons, not just for comfort reasons. But things like that, like, it was not uncommon when I was a counselor in the 90s and we'd have women's weekend, we would have women in their 70s or 80s sleeping in camp bunks. And that is not what people are looking for, not what they're comfortable with, the sort of roughing it ideal. If we want to appeal to people other than children, we need to acknowledge that. But one of the benefits of that, and I've seen that Camp Neuro-diverse in Wisconsin is really great at this. They have, they're really good at bringing in older adults or retired adults to work at camp, but they're not going to want to share a cabin with some 20-year-olds. So they have a specific, you know, higher class. But that is a good demographic change. When I was working at in camp in the 90s or even the 2000s, there weren't as many healthy older adults who had ambitions to do this. The population's getting older, they're staying healthy longer, and we can serve them, or they can be a part of our staff. We can be really creative about that. I think there's lots of opportunities there as well. MJ, do you have something that you want to put in as your button on this topic, or have you,
No, I'm just kind of still thinking about this idea that you had mentioned. You know, our population is getting older, and you know, thinking about bringing on older staff in that way. You know, I know Stomping Ground has Nana that joins them, so there are those kind of figures. But I'm also kind of thinking about this. Jack mentioned that 1 in 36 young people are being diagnosed with autism, and you know, thinking about the way that we are as a society getting older with that. And to my point, those are going to be our staff in the future. And is that something that we're starting to think about as, you know, we're accommodating for our young campers? So now what does that look like for 10, 15, 20 years down the road when they are our leaders? And how are we setting them up for success? I don't have an answer, but I do want to throw that out there.
I'm going to use that as our button on this topic. Thank you to the three of you for sharing in all of your creative ideas and different inspirations. I'm really grateful for that. Let us then move on to our tool of the week. If you are coming from the Summer Camp Society because you heard my interview over there and you followed our encouragement to come check out this conversation, a tool of the week is something that people bring to the discussion that makes them a better camp director. And it is a wide variety of things from free. I think our most expensive tool has been $85,000. But yes, we had a tractor one time as a tool. Lots of people have different stuff, some great stuff coming at us quickly. MJ, would you mind starting us off with your tool of the week, please?
Yeah, so my tool of the week is the Canva AI like magic wand that they just came out with recently. I think I'm going to kind of put that in tandem with the brand guide that you can put into your Canva account. I think this is something that can really, really simplify your graphic design, especially if it's not your passion, to be able to find something that you like through AI and go ahead and just click brand for any graphic or information that you are looking to get out to your families or however you use social media platforms. So Canva Pro is free for nonprofits. So if you're a nonprofit camp, definitely check it out. But I have found a lot of joy in using Canva, so I recommend it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks for talking about Canva Pro, because the Canva Magic Studios, their AI piece, I think is only available to their Pro members. They're starting to have quite a distinguishment between the free and the Pro. There's tons of value in the free ones, but if you get the Pro, right, that's worth it. Thank you, MJ. That one's awesome. Chris, what's your pick?
So I came back from a long trip, and there was a lot of meditation on that trip. And I was like, you know what? When I get back, I'm going to be so much more productive. I'm going to be like Chris, but like Chris 2.0. And so I've been looking for tools on how to become even better than I already am. And I stumbled across this YouTube channel that I want to share with everybody. It's this guy named Ali Abdal. He's got 5 million subscribers, which, by the way, because I looked this up, that means he's rich. Like, that's a lot of subscribers to have. That's like, he makes millions of dollars. And how does he do it? He shares videos about how to be productive, like how to manage your time and how to be really effective in whatever you're doing. So he's got videos on 7 habits that save you time. He's got stuff on online dating, passive income ideas, but mostly it's about time management. It's about productivity. And I watch 2 every morning, and I'll tell you, it's already shifted the way that I'm thinking. And I know this shouldn't matter, but he's also easy to look at. So there it is. Check it out. It's really been very helpful to me.
That is perfect. Ali also has a podcast called Deep Dive, which you can watch his recordings on YouTube. And I've seen some really interesting stuff. He does focus on YouTubers as kind of his starting place, but I have seen some really interesting stuff coming out of there as well. So I would encourage you to check that out. Good one, Christopher. Thank you. Jack.
I love that. Chris, thank you for also letting us know that he's easy to look at. Appreciate
handsome
that
fella.
very much.
I mean, just if that's your thing, I mean, if you got to watch an 8-minute video.
I love that. I've got two tools of the week that are related, I promise. One is Jamboards, which is just a part of the Google suite. It's free with all those kind of things. And I was talking with Maggie Mitchell, who helps run a bunch of our stuff at the Summer Camp Society, this morning about these. And she's got this awesome plan to have a Zoom meeting, right? We're gonna do this with a Summer Camp Society member meetup, but whatever, you can use this for anything. And she used it in her classroom where the kids will upload their photo in the Jamboard and then put a post-it note right next to it. And so you can ask all kind of questions, you can do brainstorming, and you can have this conversation that's happening that isn't rewarding the loudest people in the room. It's not rewarding Chris and I for being the most like loud, we're not afraid to make mistakes, we're going to interrupt, that kind of thing. It's rewarding better ideas, right? It's helping the crock pots, not the microwaves, be more successful, right? And so that different way of thinking about, anyway, Jamboards are awesome. You should check them out. They do a lot of things. They're basically like a whiteboard, but it's free with Google. I think it's better than Zoom's version of whiteboards. They're better. Anyway, with whiteboards and thinking about different ways that people communicate, working with the folks at Skywild that are starting this camp for kids with autism that kind of grew out of Camp Tall Tree. My big learning is like we could not value verbal communication more at camp than we do. It basically is the only thing we care about. It's the only way we share any kind of information. And part of that is because it's just like challenging to do anything but make an announcement or sit and talk to people. And we reward that in huge ways, right? And so at Skywild, what they do is they just give every staff member a whiteboard that's 9 by 11 or 9.5 by 11, whatever the size of the sheet of paper is. And you just carry it with you. And here's the thing. We're all going to have meltdowns when we're at camp. I don't care who you are. We're going to melt down. We're going to get upset. We're going to do whatever. And a lot of times when I'm melting down, I can't focus on what you have to say verbally. But if you just write me a quick note, I can read it. I can understand it. So it works with all people, not just specifically kids on the spectrum, whatever. But anyway, communicating by whiteboard, encourage you to encourage your staff to do that. And my new thing is buy everybody a little whiteboard and have that be a part of what you do. It'll help you keep notes. Hey, you got to take this with you. There's a checklist, whatever. Everybody gets a whiteboard. And I don't like the clipboard version. I like the full, you get your own whiteboard. That's your thing. Carry it in your backpack. Travis, what is your tool of the week?
Right on. Thank you so much. I want to say I love that whiteboard idea. It aligns with a lot of stuff that we did as camp directors, sort of the expectations of things you had with you. So that's a great tool. Thank you. My tool of the week is an AI app. And it is called Ready to Send. So it is an app that I have given permission to interact with my Google Workspace email. And it is an app that can watch my inbox for me. And then what it does is it sees which emails need an answer and which ones don't, and then it'll draft the answer for me. So I go in, I open up my Gmail. I haven't been in there, like I haven't been in for 3 hours right now because I've been doing podcast stuff. I'm going to go in, I'm going to see that there are 25 new emails, 3 of which need an answer, and have a drafted answer for me. I have taught it my style. I've taught it my sign off. It's getting better. It hasn't fully read through all my history of writing emails to find that particular version of casual that I have, but it's getting closer all of the time. And so I just go in and I was like, yeah, this is close. This is someone I don't know. So, it's not an email I would send necessarily to someone on this panel that I know pretty well or I'm confident in their campiness. But potential clients, all those things. Here's my calendar, sign up, all of that stuff. It does it for me. And so I just have to go in and say, okay, I'll change this little bit of phrase. I'm going to be a little bit cheesier in this, and away it goes. And the amount of time that saves me every day, because I'm a person who struggles with writing. All I need is a first draft to get me going. And even if I don't use any of what it puts in there, it gets me going on answering that email because it's given me a first draft. And it is, at the moment, you can use it a few times for free. I think it'll send 100 emails or create 100 drafts, because sometimes it takes a while to teach it what deserves an answer and what doesn't. It'll do 100 drafts for free for you to test it out, which is exactly what I did. At the end of that, I put my credit card down, and it wasn't super expensive to do it, as considering how much time it takes me. If I recall, it was about $100 a year. And I get that that's a big number, but the amount of time that saves me, how long it would take me to make $100 in this job is minuscule compared to the amount of time it's going to save me daily. So that is Ready to Send. It has a weird URL. There's another Ready to Send that I think comes up more easy. It's easier to find. So instead, what I'm going to do is ask you to go to camphacker.tv/podcast, look up this episode where we're talking about the changing demographics and how we deal with that in camp, and find links to everybody's tools in that spot. Jack and EmJ, thank you for being on. So grateful. Jack, it's been a long time since you've been on. It's nice to have you back. And EmJ, great to have you for the first time. And I can start with you, EmJ. How can people get in touch with you if they have follow-up questions?
Yeah, if anybody wants to get in touch with me, they can reach me at emj@thesocialsociety.com. You can also DM the Summer Camp Society on Instagram, and then I'll find it. Someone will flag it for me. That'd be the best way to reach me. Thank you for having me.
That's great. You're breaking up a little bit, EmJ, but we caught that. I just don't want to, I want to promo and say you should be checking out the Summer Camp Society podcast that EmJ is responsible for producing. They happen to be on this very day featuring a great guest that I love very much. Jack, thanks for being back on CampHacker.
Yeah, thank you, Travis. Thank you for all your support over the years, and Chris, all your support over the years too. Little known fact: Chris and I did a staff recruiting event at Columbia, at the University of Columbia University, whatever y'all call it, a bunch of years ago. It was so fun. If ice cream were good for you on YouTube, you could find it. But yeah, the best way to get in contact with me is just go to the Summer Camp Society Instagram and send us a DM, and it'll get figured out how to get to me, because honestly I suck at email and I'm not trying to get better.
There you go. Fair. I appreciate you putting that out there. So thank you to both of you. We're grateful to have you to share the mic with us today. The last thing I want to say before you go is I really invite you to check out the Day Camp Pod, one of the other Go Camp Pro shows. The Day Camp Pod, Andy and Sam are doing some great stuff. I hear that if you go and search for Jack Shot on there, you will also hear a Jack Shot on another Go Camp Pro podcast. So Check out the Day Camp Pod, search in your podcast apps, or ask your smart speaker to play that. Even if you're not specifically a day camp professional, there are tons of great ideas in there. And Andy and Sam are really intentional with the guests that they bring in. And there's a lot of lessons if you're not a day camp pro in particular. So I invite you to check that out. Thanks for the evening, friends.